Hey, welcome to the Razzle Dazzle Show, a podcast where we talk about our favorite video games and all things pop culture with an emphasis on our favorites. I'm your host, Jared, and our guest today is Harrison Withrow. Harrison is the co-founder of Arkanya Games and lead developer of The Girl from Arkanya, a pixel action RPG inspired by classic Zelda adventures where treasure hunter Marisa and her capybara companion Kapi explore jungles, solve puzzles, and battle through dungeons. Originally a writer, Harrison turned to game development to tell stories that words alone couldn't capture. After a decade as a hobbyist, he went full-time thanks to his successful 2020 Kickstarter. Since then, he's contributed story work to Ova Magica and continues to update Arkanya while laying the groundwork for his next indie project. Please let us know what you think about this episode somewhere on the internet. Be sure to follow us on our socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Links to them are down below. And with all that being said,
it's Razzle Dazzle time.
Hello, Harrison. Thank you so much for being on the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, a quick Kickstarter question. I really gotta know, what is your favorite kind of beer?
Well, lately I've been more of a wine guy, to be honest. But so we have a brewery in town. Used to be called Tin Man. Now it's changed to Sun King, which I believe is they're a national or regional chain or something. And they have a Mexican lager called the Pachanga. I'm a big fan of the Pachanga.
What is the Pachanga? What kind of beer is it?
It's a Mexican lager. It's really light. It's just a little bit fruity. I'm not the biggest fan of like the super fruity beers, but this one's got just a little bit. And when you're out on the patio at the brewery and it's like 80-90 degrees out and you're just chilling there with that. It's perfect.
Okay. Before we get more into the beer talk, because obviously that's just setting up for the Girl from Arkanya, which we'll talk about in a bit. Before we get there, I want to start with you. Start at the beginning. Can you tell us, where did you grow up and how would you describe the musical background of your childhood?
Okay, so I grew up in Peru, Indiana. Spent a little bit of my childhood out in Tennessee, but for the most part, right here in Indiana. And that's where I'm still at. And I ended up eventually moving back to my hometown. As for the musical background of my childhood, I've always been a big music listener. I have musicians in my family, people that play instruments. My sister plays every instrument under the sun and she sings super well. She's got her own little home studio and everything. I took guitar lessons when I was young, but it never really caught with me. But I've always been, I always like to have music playing in the background whenever I'm doing anything. I've got a home server with just probably close to 2 terabytes of music at this point. But as far as like actually being involved in music, other than going to like concerts, which I used to in my 20s, I went to a ton of concerts. Lately, just haven't had that much time for it. But so a lot of listening, not a lot of creating.
So what kind of music was being played in the household then?
So I kind of started off with like the stuff that my dad listened to when he was younger, because so my dad was like a young man in the 80s. And so he had a bunch of he turned me on to a bunch of bands like Twisted Sister, like Europe, like AC/DC, all these bands that were big in that era. And I got super into that style of like hard rock, heavy metal. And so when I was really young, that's kind of what I was into. But then as a teenager, I discovered a genre called power metal. And that became like my entire life for like over a decade.
Right.
And that was all I listened to for that time. I got super deep into that. And so I'm fairly close to Chicago, and we have there's a concert hall there in Chicago where a lot of those like European power metal bands will actually they'll tour and they'll come to that concert hall. And so we were getting a lot of really good concerts in the area for a long time. And so I was going to like Dragon Force and like Sabaton, Hammerfall. We even had, I want to say we had Sonata Arctica here one time. And so for a while, I was going to like 4 or 5 concerts a year, which maybe doesn't sound like a lot, but when it requires a 2.5 hour drive both ways to to Chicago and back, it's a bit of a hassle.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
we're making it work.
So I think you've already touched upon this. Do you remember the first band or musician that really got your attention when you were young? You already mentioned the type of music, but do you remember a specific band?
Yeah. So there was I cannot remember how I came across this. I think so. My neighbor had like cable internet way before my family did, because this was back when people still were on like dial-up. And one of the first things he did when they got cable internet was do you remember LimeWire? Are you old enough to know about LimeWire?
Yes.
Okay. So he downloaded LimeWire and he just immediately started just pirating tons and tons of different music. And one of the bands he got, he downloaded was a band called Dragon Force.
Okay.
And and I'm sure you've heard of Dragon Force, because later they would get really big through Guitar Hero.
Wow. Okay.
But this was before even that. And I heard Dragon Force for the first time, and that just immediately for me, that was it. I'm like, whoa, this is really cool, because this music sounds like awesome. It's like all the stuff from the 80s, but it's like even more hardcore. And they're like, they're singing about like knights and dragons and like big battles and stuff. And I'm like, this is it. This is my thing. And so I had my mom take me to Walmart. And I was probably really lucky that was like the band that I got introduced to this genre through, because it was probably the only one of those bands back then that you could have gone to Walmart and gotten their album.
Sure, yeah.
Because it was still a super niche genre back then. I mean, it's a little bit niche today, but it was like really niche back then. And but yeah, so I go to Walmart. I find Sonic Firestorm was the newest album they had out at the time, and so I got that. And I only knew one song on it, but it was like the coolest song. It's Fury of the Storm was the first one I heard from them. And so I get this album, and I bug my mom to like let me put it on the car stereo on the drive home. And anyway, so she just hates this type of music, but she tolerated it, and I'm like, this is the best band ever. How could there ever be anything better than this? And so that was. From that point, I was hooked, and I was just like just straight power metal guy for like the next decade.
Was that the first like physical music you've ever owned that was yours?
That was.
Wow.
That was, because before that, I mean, my parents had this huge CD collection, and so I would listen to their stuff, but that was the first album that I ever bought.
What you just told me about that album and about that song, that one song that you knew from that album, kind of already sounds similar to a song story. Now, that's what this next question is going to be about. So I'm going to give you some context, and I'm still going to ask it. And if you want to change it, cool. If not, doesn't matter. So I'm a audio engineer and producer for an NPR PBS station in Southwest Florida for WGCU. And we have this other show called 3 Song Stories, where we tell people's biography through music. The guests will come in and they'll pick 3 songs that every time they listen to these songs, they immediately get transported back to a time and place that they have a significant story associated with it. It could be anything. It could be a funny little anecdote. It could be like something super serious, something depressing if they want, or something, super important to their lives. Whatever. I want to ask you, off the top of your head, do you have one song story you're willing to share?
It's not really a story about myself, but I think the song that has most impacted me just on a sort of like psychological level it is a song called The Last Amazing Grays by Sonata Arctica. And so this is a song about an old wolf that is dying. And it's kind of like his mental journey through like passing the torch to his sort of successor, where he's sort of accepting that his glory days are over, and it's time for him to move on into the next life and sort of be with the wolves that he grew up with, and let the future belong to the next generation. And even when I was like really young, I think I heard this song for the first time when I was 17, and I remember just like being in my truck and having this come on for the first time, because I had just bought this album, and I was thinking, man, that's a really deep song for like for this band, for this genre. Like there's a lot of sort of like emotions going on here. And so it kind of struck me just for how intense it was in that regard. But then I feel like as I've gone through life, I've had all of these mentors who worked so hard to give me opportunities that I would have never had on my own. And just all of these people that have helped me get to where I am today. And it a lot of times it has been somebody who they're sort of like towards the end of their career, or it's an older mentor, and I'm always that that fresh-faced guy coming in, has no idea what he's doing. But I've had so many people that have helped lift me up, even when I felt like I didn't really deserve it, but they wanted to make sure that I had everything that I needed to succeed. And I've been so lucky in that regard. And I keep going back to that song and, thinking about, all of these people who have made that kind of like their, not that most of these people I'm thinking of are still alive, so it's not really their final mission in life, but sometimes it's like the last part of their careers. Like my public affairs chief, he was very close to retiring while I was there, and he put a lot of effort that he didn't need to into making sure I had a successful career, that I had a lot of opportunities that other people didn't get. And just a lot of things like that in my life. And I think about that, and I think someday I want to be that for somebody else. I want to be that guy that passes the torch and makes sure somebody else gets the same opportunities, gets the same help that I did, and not feel like I sort of hoarded that all to myself. Like all these people helped me, but then I'm the greatest and the road ends with me, right? No, I want to pass that on, right? And so every time that song comes on, it's like I kind of mentally go through that, and I can't think of any. Like, there are a lot of songs that inspire me, that send my imagination to different places, but that's the only song I can really think of that kind of makes me actually reflect on my own life and makes me want to be a better person. Sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I think you already answered the follow-up, but how does that song fit into your life today?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it makes me want to make sure that I don't forget what I was given, and that I pay that forward someday. Because it's the kind of thing where I will never be able to return the favor. There's nothing I can really do for those people that's going to be anywhere equivalent to what they did for me, but I can one day extend that help to somebody else who needs it. And so that's kind of a goal in life for me, is when that opportunity arises, like if there is somebody who I can, I can make that kind of difference in their life, that I don't waste that I don't, ignore that. I think it's important to keep thinking about it, because I'm the kind of person that I get pretty deep into my own head, and sometimes I forget that there's other people around me. And so I could very easily just live my whole life that way, where I'm kind of like only sort of thinking about myself and not really paying attention to what's happening to others. And so I kind of have to keep reminding myself, you're not the only person in the world. You need to be, cognizant of what's happening to the people near you, what's happening to your friends, to your family, to the people that look up to you, and make sure they're taken care of.
That's beautifully said. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, no problem.
What kind of video games did you have growing up? Do you remember your first console?
I absolutely do. Okay, so my first console was a Super Nintendo. And so coincidentally, when I was born, my mom was on maternity leave, and my dad wanted to, give her just something to do in the house when she wasn't, busy with me.
Right.
And so he went out and bought her a Super Nintendo, which was still a fairly new thing at the time. And he got her A Link to the Past to play on that. And I think also Dr. Mario was the other one. And she ended up being way more into Dr. Mario. But my dad was playing Link to the Past all the time. And then as I got old enough to actually start playing these games myself, that was the first game that he introduced me to, and we would play that together. And I wasn't very good at it, so he would help me through all the hard parts. And but yeah, so Link to the Past was I'm pretty sure the first video game I ever played. And then I don't know if it was because it was the first game I ever played, but I ended up just kind of becoming obsessed with it. I mean, obviously I spent the last 5-6 years making a game very much based on it. And so I'm still a big fan of it. But yeah, so it was, and I want to say that game came out about 2 months before I was born. I think, because I was born in July, and I want to say it came out it was a little more than 2 months. I want to say it came out in March of that year.
Right.
But yeah, so that game I still have it around here somewhere, but
the original copy?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I do. And that game has been with me literally my entire life.
That answers my next question. I was going to ask, so clearly Zelda, the gaming franchise, has meant a lot to you throughout the entirety of your life. How does Zelda in particular, not before we get into Arkanya, how does Zelda, the franchise itself, fit into your life today?
Well, maybe not as much as I wish it did. The most recent entries have not really been my thing.
Really?
Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, they're cool games. They just don't feel like Zelda games to me. It's they're kind of their own separate thing. But I'm just so inspired by the storytelling of Zelda, and I wish I could. So I'm somebody who likes to over-explain things, and I like to really just dig super deep into random details that I find exciting, and I want to share that with the reader, and I want them to find it exciting too. But I'm so inspired by Zelda's writing style because it leaves such an aura of mystery. It gives you just enough that, it kind of sets your imagination running and you want to know more, but then they hold it back. And it's kind of, they just kind of they've got this little carrot they're dangling in front of you, but it's always just off in the distance. And no matter how far you get into that franchise, because I'm somebody who really likes the whole big combined Zelda timeline, all the Hyrule Historia lore and stuff like that. And so every new game, I'm just okay, how does this fit into the greater continuity? What can this tell us about past games? And it's the deeper that we get into it, the less it feels like we know, because it's like we learn something new, but then we see all of this additional stuff that we're like, okay, well, we didn't even know that we didn't know about that. And
Right.
so, and I want to be able to write like that. That's one of my big goals as a writer and as a game developer, is I want to be able to create something that has that sense of mystery and kind of break this habit I have of, you know, explaining everything and, you know, telling the player exactly what I'm thinking. Because, I mean, you can kind of see why a writer would want to do that, because I'm like, this thing is really cool in my head and I want to make sure you know it's really cool. But then it's kind of like, you know, once I've told you how cool it is, there's no more questions. Now you already know everything.
So getting into the start of you writing and you falling in love with that, you said that your first passion is writing. What were those early stories like that you were thinking in your head growing up, and what made you feel that games could tell them better than words on a page?
Right. So when I was very young, I was a big sci-fi reader. I really liked, I mean, I started off with, because, I mean, pretty much everything I was into as a kid was as a result of something that my dad had been into as a young man. Because, like, all of my, like, toys were, all of the toys I really liked were ones that I kind of got handed down from him. And, you know, all the books I had were, like, his old books. And so he was big into sci-fi, and so kind of as a result, I got really big into sci-fi, and I was reading like the like Star Wars extended universe stuff.
Hell yeah!
I was reading like Isaac Asimov. I was reading, I can't think of his name now. The guy wrote Starship Troopers, but I was reading Starship Troopers, and you know, and I just thought this stuff. Ender's Game, that was another big one for me. I was huge into Ender's Game as a kid, but. So I was like super into sci-fi for the longest time, and I would just write constantly. I wish I could write now the way that I wrote when I was like 13 years old, because I would just sit at the family computer. Back then I didn't have my own PC yet, and we just had this computer in the living room, and I would sit there, open up Microsoft Word, and I would just type and type for like 5 hours straight sometimes. And I look back at that and I'm like, I really struggle with that today.
Right.
But you know, at the time, it's I think the big advantage that I had was that I didn't really know anything about writing. And when you don't know anything about writing, you know, you're free to do anything, because you don't have all these sort of rules that you have to work around. Whereas it's like, the more you learn about what makes good writing, it almost becomes harder to write, because now you're trying to navigate this labyrinth of like, you know, pitfalls, and you know, you're so worried about, does this sound good or not, is this going to confuse the reader? But you know, when you're 13 years old and you don't know the first thing about writing, you can write anything, and you can write it fast. Yeah, so I was doing a lot of kind of emulating what I was reading at the time. I was writing a lot of stuff that was, you know, I was trying to make it like Ender's Game, or trying to make it, you know, kind of like Star Wars. Like I kind of liked the idea of incorporating like magic into sci-fi. That was something I thought was like super cool at the time. I still kind of think that's really cool. But then gradually, as I got older, one of the things that kind of like changed the things that I like, I guess, is so I had some friends that were really into World of Warcraft, and so I had some exposure to like medieval fantasy before that,
right?
But it wasn't like a big thing for me. I was really into like the sci-fi stuff, and I wanted to. So there were a couple of like big competing MMOs at the time. I wanted to play Star Wars Galaxies, which, you know, is a game that didn't hold on super well after that. So it's probably for the best that they talked me out of it. But no, they're like, well, whatever you do, we're all playing World of Warcraft. And so I'm like, all right, fine, I'll play World of Warcraft. And I loved that game. Oh my goodness. I probably could have like done so much better in school and just done so much more with my life if I had not found World of Warcraft. But I played just an unreasonable amount of that game as a teenager, and it kind of changed my whole outlook on fiction, because not necessarily World of Warcraft itself, but it's like as I started getting into that, I started to I'm like, okay, this game has a bunch of books, so let's go read those books. And then so I started reading all the World of Warcraft novels, and I got through all of those that were out at the time. And that was like Lord of the Clans, Day of the Dragon, and those I thought were super cool. So then I'm like, all right, I want more stuff like this. And then I think I want to say again, it was my dad was like, hey, you should read these Lord of the Rings books if you're into that stuff. And so I read those, and those were really freaking cool. And so at that point, I almost kind of fall off of like the sci-fi bandwagon, where it's like that was almost a thing that I was really just into because that's what I knew. And you know, that's like all the like the books and whatnot that I had were all centered around that. But then I start developing this love for like medieval fantasy, and at that point my writing also changed as a result, where I start to write that sort of thing, where I'm just really focused on you know, knights are cool, dragons are cool, you know, we like big we just like big battles with tons of dudes like lining up across from each other, and then you know everybody runs at each other with their spears and they fight in the middle. Like that's awesome. And that's kind of what all of my writing, all of my creative writing has been centered around since, because that's just what I'm passionate about. I've never been able to do like more like modern day, more serious stuff. You know, I can't really do stuff that's more about, I guess, what you would call like human experience pieces.
Sure.
Because that stuff is all, to me, it's all really boring. I really like these you know, these grand adventures and these really fantastical settings, and that's what really has always sort of vibed with me. Now, there was a while where all of my writing was journalistic stuff, because for a while, my career for several years, I was a public affairs specialist in the Air Force. And
Wow.
one of the things that a public affairs specialist does is they write basically news articles to do press releases for you know, something is happening like on the base or in the wider military, and we want the you know, we want the public to know about it. So we'll write up this big long press release that has all of the information that they need, and it kind of the purpose is to kind of control the narrative almost. Like, let's say this is not a common thing, but let's say there's a plane crash on the airbase that's out here, and never happened while I was working there. Did come close to happening once, but so let's say there's a plane crash and everybody knows about it. It's really hard to hide a plane crash when it happens in a populated area. You don't want people to be speculating, coming up with rumors, and then the rumor becomes the official story. You want to get out ahead of it and say, this is what happened, this is how we responded to it, this is what the people on the scene were saying, and you get that out to the public as quick as you can, and you hope that when your you know, when these media outlets are writing about it, that they are citing you and not the rumor spreaders. And so that was my job for 6 years, and that was probably the most writing that I've ever done, because even on a slow day, I was doing 2 articles a day.
Right.
And we were just yeah, we were just writing about any old thing, because we had this this website, that they really wanted the website to stay like super active because it just, I don't know, it looked good on our metrics. Somebody was trying to, get a really good performance review. But so I would go around just interviewing random people on the base, kind of like you're doing actually. But I would interview them about like what their job was, how they got into that position. I'd ask them like what motivates them to do the job. What was some of the most memorable moments they had in the job, and then I would just sort of write like interest pieces on those people, and it'd be like a profile of the head like medical officer on the base, and I would just talk about like who he is and what he's achieved and just that sort of thing. And so for the longest time, that was everything that I wrote, because I wrote so much doing that. I had no motivation to write anything else. It's like I got done doing that, I didn't even want to look at a keyboard. But then I got out of that job. Actually, COVID kind of killed that job because we couldn't talk to people face to face anymore. And by the time it came time to renew my enlistment, I'm just like, nah, I don't know that this is for me anymore. And so I got out. And when I got out, I suddenly had that itch to start writing again. I'm like, well, I'm not writing day in and day out about stuff I don't care about. I kind of want to start writing about the stuff that I do care about again. And so that's when I started working on the story for Arkanya. Actually, I had kind of started the story for Arkanya several years earlier, but it changed so much since then that the story that existed back then is almost something entirely different from what's in the game now. But yeah, that's kind of how we got here, actually.
Wow. I can tell you're a bit of a journalist just because you are great at answering questions that I haven't even asked yet. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, if I start rambling, feel free to stop me.
Oh my God, no. As you know, keep the interviewee going, right? Don't interrupt. Yeah. Let them go. Oh my God, I love this because like now you know my tricks and I also know yours. That's so funny. I love this. So a quick like overview of how I'm seeing your journey into the world of Amazonia. You started with a love of fantasy, high fantasy with Zelda at a very, very young age.
Yes.
Then you swerved, I guess, or curved to sci-fi with Star Wars and all the other things that you mentioned. And then you found your way back into fantasy. And now with Arkanya, you've even incorporated some sci-fi elements within the game, at least in the later portions of the game, which is really cool. I just hearing you say that, I made those connections. I'm like, that's pretty freaking cool.
You know what's funny is there was originally not going to be any sci-fi elements in Arkanya, and really? I know that sounds crazy because it's such a big part of the game now.
Yeah.
But when we did our Kickstarter, one of our backer tiers was for a backer to help design a boss.
Yep.
And we actually ended up selling 2 of those because like an hour after we were only going to do one, and then like an hour after somebody bought that one, another guy contacted us and he's like, is there any way that I could do that too? And
he's like, take my money, please.
Like, I don't really want to do this twice, but it is a lot of money. Like, yeah, so ultimately I got talked into it. And but the first guy who backed at that tier, he didn't really care that much about the actual boss design. He was just one of those those super backers that he just wants to get his name on everything.
Yeah.
And he's just like somebody that's just insanely rich and you have no idea where their money is coming from, but they're just throwing it at you. But when we asked him what kind of boss he wanted, he didn't really have a whole lot to say on it, but he sent us this picture of a robot from, I want to say it was from Mega Man, that he thought looked really cool. And he was like, can you do something like this, but make it like red? I'm like, Okay, we could try. But then I like to. So I actually kind of love when I get a like a wrench thrown in my writing like that, because especially if it's early on and I can still adapt things, because like I said, Arkanya was originally supposed to have no sci-fi elements at all, but now I've got this guy that's given me a ton of money, and he wants a robot in there, and I'm just like, okay, how can we make this work? How can we put this robot in here and have it fit the setting? Because I didn't want to just do like, oh, this is the Kickstarter boss and it's not really canon.
Right.
I wanted it to be a part of the game. And so I started thinking, okay, so well, actually, my co-developer Rob, he also contributed a lot to the sort of line of reasoning on this, because he was the one that brought up, well, South America, particularly Brazil, they have a ton of UFO sightings. Like it's one of the it's one of the densest countries for like reported UFO sightings, and I have no idea why they seem to spot so many UFOs in Brazil. But he's like, what if we did some sort of like ancient aliens type stuff, where we had like a UFO like crash land in the jungle like forever ago, and they're still out there, and they've got like the robots and stuff. And so I kind of took that idea and ran with it. Where how far are you in the game?
I've 100%ed. I'm pretty sure I tweeted about it, and
okay, yeah, you did,
and I mentioned it in the Discord, I think.
So so you'll already know all this.
Oh yeah.
But so I kind of came up with this plot where hundreds of years ago there was this spaceship battle above Earth, and the losing side, one of their ships, crash lands on Earth, and that's the Munuane in the game. They're the descendants of the crew that was on that ship when it crashed on when it emergency landed on Earth. And so they're stranded there because all of their buddies they can't come save them because they're retreating from a battle that they just lost. And so the Munuane, they're stuck here on Earth. They still have their technology that they're salvaging from the wreckage of the ship, but over generations they're forgetting the origin of it. Like their descendants, they don't really remember where the tech came from or how it works exactly. They're just trying to maintain it. But one of the things that they brought with them were all of these war mechs that they would have used to to fight each other in whatever sort of like space war they were a part of. And so the war mechs, they gifted them to the Marajorans because the Marajorans are hosting them. They're allowing them to live on this land, and they're helping them survive in this jungle that they're very unfamiliar with. And so they gift them these war mechs, and they say these can guard your temples against threats. And so that's how we end up with the robot bosses in each temple, because originally it was just going to be one boss that was a robot, but now it's a whole bunch of them are robots. So, but then that kind of like rolls into the beginning of the game where Zolotl and his Munuane allies, they've turned all the robots against the Marajorans, and so now, even though they were originally protectors of the temples, now they're the ones stopping you from rescuing the priestesses from the temples.
Yeah, I think that's so funny how the one guy who's like, I don't really care.
He changed the whole game.
Yeah, he ended up not just creating one boss, he created like 8 or 6, however many.
Yeah.
I love that so much. That is so, like, I love how just one small event can trickle down and shape the entirety of a game. And that's what I love about the collaboration aspect between the audience, the gamers, and the game devs, right? I love that when within, like, seeing that within the community. It's so freaking cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I love when I just get a wrench like that thrown into my work that makes me sort of recontextualize the whole thing. I mean, I usually grumble about it initially. I'm like, because I'm really attached to the idea that I have, and I'm like, now I have to change everything. Like, I hate this. But then once the ideas start flowing and I start seeing how it can all sort of fit together, I'm like, wait, this is gonna be cool. We can do this.
Yeah, it's so cool. Then now let's just dive deeper into Arkanya. It is Arkanya Games' debut game that just released on August 21st, just a little over a month ago as a release of this recording. Arkanya has been compared to Zelda, obviously, because it is a Zelda-like, taking inspirations from not only, I'm sure, A Link to the Past, but Minish Cap and even Four Swords because of the co-op aspects, which is super cool. But it's got its own identity, obviously. The Amazonian setting, Marisa and Kapi themselves, sacred dances, right? What was the seed idea that made this game your story that you hinted at not too long ago?
So there were two pieces of media that really inspired me on the story for Kanya. So I had just encountered both of these things around the same time, which was there was a prog metal album called Kernuna by a band also called Kernuna. And that was the only album they ever made, which was really tragic to me because I absolutely loved it. But this was a like prog metal concept album inspired by Brazilian folklore. And I was just so blown away by it. And I knew right after hearing the album, I'm like, I knew I wanted to make something that was inspired by that because, one of the things, so a lot of my writing is inspired by music. And I really love the concept of taking an idea from one medium and sort of trying to translate it into a different medium. So, in this case, it's like it's prog metal. So even though it's like it's all about Brazilian folklore, a lot of it is not even vocal. I mean, this is the kind of music where you will have like a 12-minute just sort of like guitar solo.
Right.
And it's like they're sort of conveying ideas more through that than they are through like the lyrics. And but I'm like, I want to make something that feels like this, but like in a story. And then like I said in my intro that I sent to you, I think the type of stories that I like to tell are best told through games because I really like how expressive you can be with, because not only can you do like dialogue and cutscenes and the sort of stuff that you would be able to convey through like a book or through like a movie, but then you also have like the music is a very important aspect. You can really set the mood with music. You can kind of like, there are things you can tell stories through gameplay that you can't really as easily convey through like text. Like, for example, if you want to really convey somebody struggling, now there are writers who they can make you feel exactly what their character is feeling. Like these people that they just have this unnatural writing ability where they can put you inside of that character. That's not me. I wish that was me. That's not me. But you can kind of achieve that same thing by conveying it through gameplay, by putting your player through that experience. Like, okay, so a lot of people really don't like this one, but I have that long chain of fetch quests that you have to do before the third sword upgrade in Arkanya.
Oh yeah, I'm well aware of that one.
Yeah. And so Marisa is getting progressively angrier.
I love
as
that
quest goes on.
I love it so much. Oh my god, like you have no idea how much I love the writing in this game. It's just like when games like break that fourth wall just a little bit. It's like, it's not like Marisa being like listen, gamers, like this I know this is a fetch quest, this sucks. That's not what's happening, but like I like how it's still integrated, kind of like tongue in cheek. Like it reminds me of the same level of writing as the Shantae games. That's one of the reasons why I love those games, because the writing there's hilarious, and you have done such a good job with this game. But yeah, please continue. This quest is hilarious.
Yeah, and so it's kind of a thing where if this were in a book, and I was describing Marisa doing this long chain of annoying events, you might think it's funny, but you wouldn't feel the frustration that she feels. But,
oh my God.
Because I can make the player actually walk through this and do all of the steps that she has to do, it's like you're feeling sort of the same emotion about this that she is, where you're just like, I'm so done with this.
You have timed it so freaking well, because yeah, you're right. As the quest was getting longer and longer, I was starting to feel like, oh, okay, all right, game, okay. And then when we went all the way back to the beginning, I'm like, I see you. And then Marisa says what she says, and I'm like, yes, say it, girl, yes. You timed it so well.
Yeah, and I'm glad that came across. I know for some people it was kind of a miss, but it seems like a lot of people and you yourself really enjoyed it. So I'm glad. Well, maybe enjoyed to hate it.
Yes,
but,
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm glad that came across as well as it did. So yeah, anyway, to wrap that back to the Karnuna album.
Yeah.
So I knew I wanted to tell a story that was kind of centered around this folklore, because I was so fascinated by it. I was like, when I get into these sorts of things, I get really into them. And so I started writing The Girl from Arkanya, and I got like a rough outline of a few chapters. More of a draft than an outline, but I got a little ways into it, and I said, I don't really want to do this as a book, do I? I want to do this as a video game, because I had previously, before my Air Force career kind of sucked all the energy out of me, I was really into tinkering with game engines, and I had been learning Unity from about I want to say 2010 to about 2017. And then there was like maybe like 2 years where I just didn't touch it, because, I just had too many things going on at once and something had to give. And I was like, you know what? I'm never going to be any sort of game developer anyway. So I'm just going to set this aside and maybe come back to it someday. And well, ironically, now here I am with, a published game, and I've worked on 2 games now. So, I was clearly very wrong, but yeah, so I got a ways into this book idea for The Girl from Arkanya, and decided the only way I'm going to tell this the way that I want to is if it's a game, because the whole time I'm writing it, I'm thinking about The Legend of Zelda and just the sort of like the feelings that I always had playing The Legend of Zelda, and just that sense of exploration and discovery. And I'm like, I don't know how to make a reader feel that. They need to be playing it in a game. So around that same time, my co-developer, Rob, he had been going back and replaying the Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages games.
Great games.
And yeah, those are fantastic games. Yeah. But he was like, he had been getting into like, I want to say like ROM hacks, where, they're like customized versions of those games that people have made, where they like, make their own dungeons and stuff.
Sure. Okay.
And he had been doing those, and he's like, we should make one of these. And I kind of was just sitting on those 2 ideas, and where I'm like, I kind of want to make, I have this urge to make this Girl from Arkanya game. But at the same time, that sounds really cool. What if we just kind of put these both together, and instead of doing a Zelda ROM hack, what if we just make our own Zelda-like? And so we started on it, and I think so that would have been in like late 2019. I want to say actually October of 2019 was when we said, okay, this is what we're doing. We're making this game. And then about a year later was our Kickstarter. But yeah, so Pernuna definitely had a huge impact on that. But around that same time, I was also playing a game that back then was still fairly new, Kingdom Come Deliverance.
Right. Yeah.
Which just recently got a well, I say recently, it's been like 6 months now, but it fairly recently got a sequel, which is even better than the first one.
Yeah.
So anybody listening, if you're into like Skyrim and like Middle Ages and any of that sort of stuff, you need to play Kingdom Come Deliverance. Fantastic freaking game. But around the time that I was listening to, that Brazilian prog metal album, I was also playing Kingdom Come Deliverance, and no game has ever just sort of clicked for me as fast as that one did. That was like everything I had ever wanted in a video game. And, anybody listening that's played the Girl from Arkanya is going to go, what does this have to do with Arkanya? Because those games are nothing alike. Well, it made me really want to do something with like medieval Germany, right? And those two ideas don't really square together, like medieval Germany and Brazilian folklore, except I kind of forced them together. And that's how you end up with the story for Arkanya, where I'm like, no, we are going to put the square peg in the round hole. It's gonna fit. And those were like the two most important pieces of media in my life at the time. Those were the two biggest things inspiring me. And so, yeah, The Girl from Arkanya was kind of just taking those two things and just slamming them together,
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought it up, because this is a point I really wanted to talk about. It's I love the different types of cultures that are within this game. Yeah, there's the German part with Arkanya itself. There's the Aztec with Zolotl and his stuff, right? The Amazonia itself, right? And we got some Spanish stuff with Catarina, which is absolutely my favorite character by far.
Awesome.
There, her theme song too. Oh my god! I was like, okay, when she first came up on screen, I was the beats were starting to hit, and I'm like, okay, I see you, game. This is sick. Love it. I just like seeing all the different types of cultures just somehow mixing, but like it works. Like you guys did an amazing job combining so many different types of culture, because like I'm also like a little bit part German from my dad's side, and I'm also Hispanic, right? From my mom's side, I'm Honduran and Cuban. I understand. It seems Katarina's whole kingdom is like more Spaniard than anything, but still, like it's Spanish, right? At least it's enough for me.
Yeah.
So like seeing all these things blend together, I absolutely love, and yeah, I would love for you to expand upon like how you went about this world coming together.
First of all, I'm super glad to hear that Katarina is your favorite character.
Yes.
Because she's my favorite character. And people get really into Indira and Marisa are the two ones, the two characters that seem to have the most. Well, Kapi is probably the one with the most fans, if I'm being honest. But outside of Kapi, most people gravitate towards either Marisa or Indira, or sometimes I hear people really like Chloe.
Right. I mean, like I love Marisa too. She is hilarious. I love her for different. No, I mean I think I love her for similar reasons as Katarina, because they're both like high energy and like rambunctious, I guess. But like Katarina is more explosive, literally, than Marisa. Marisa's just like hell yeah,
Yeah, and she is my favorite one to write, and I'm always so excited when somebody tells me that she was their favorite.
Yeah,
because I want to, more than any other character, I really want to incorporate her into future games. I think I really think she needs her own game.
Katarina?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I love it.
So as far as how all of that sort of came together, I mean, you've already kind of got the like Brazilian and German influences where those came from. Now, Kingdom Come, that game is like, Bohemia, which is mainly in Czechia today. But it's still a very sort of like Germanic region. And, I also, I come from a family of German immigrants. And so, my grandmother was just like okay at English. I remember when I was young, I remember her speaking a lot of German, and that's I've always been really interested in that culture as a result, and so that was kind of where that came from. As for the Spanish side of things, well, I knew I wanted the game to have pirates, and so I decided pretty early on that the pirates were going to be from Castile, which was, before Spain was one complete unified country. That was like the dominant kingdom in that region was the Kingdom of Castile, and they were ultimately the ones that united all of Spain. And so I decided pretty early on that Raphael was going to be from Castile.
Yeah.
And in fact, his song, which was one of the earliest songs written for the game, his song is called The Man from Castile, which was supposed to be sort of juxtaposed to The Girl from Arkanya.
Right.
And and Raphael actually existed long before Katarina. But as I was working on Raphael's backstory, like, okay, so why is he a pirate? Well, he was a captain in the Castilian Navy, but then something happens and he leaves, and ultimately we decided, well, what happened was they ran out of rum, and so the sailors are supposed to get rum rations every day, and once the rum rations stopped and they all sobered up, they said, well, this sucks, we're leaving. And so we sort of have this split. Well, originally Katarina was going to be a German called Prince Henry, and or Prince Heinrich rather, because we already had Henry the blacksmith, who is a reference to the character from Kingdom Come Deliverance. But Heinrich was supposed to show up and basically just throw this huge party. And then he was going to be like really into Marisa and like really interested in all her like treasure hunting stuff. So he was just going to like have all these side quests where he's just telling you to go get random stuff because he just, he thinks it's cool that she's a treasure hunter, and he's kind of flirting with her. But all of Heinrich's knights were going to be like, you're like this weird street urchin girl, you need to like stay away from him. And so there was going to be kind of that conflict there. But then the more I was writing the dialogue for the Castilian pirates, and I kept focusing on how much because I came up with this Princessa character, and that was before she was even called Katarina. They just called her the Princessa at the time. And she was the one that they blamed for the rum shortage and the mutiny, and so they're just talking about how much they hate her. And then I thought, this character should be in the game. As much as she's getting talked about, I want people to know why things in this region are the way that they are, because pretty much everything that's going on down there in Costa Verde is in some way because of her. But then I also tweaked Zolot's story a bit, because so I was spending a lot of time sort of when I'm working on games, I waste a lot of time on like Wikipedia. I'm doing quote unquote research, but really I'm just procrastinating. But I was reading about Hernan Cortez and his conquest of Central America, and I thought I could do something like this between Zolotl and Katarina, where I could almost turn Zalotl into this sort of like tragic anti-hero where he's doing evil things, but he's doing it to try to save his civilization from this insane woman who is like trying to conquer his homeland. And she's just so overwhelmingly powerful because she has all of these ships and all of these knights and all of these cannons, and even him with his magic. There's not a lot that he can do about it. And so he comes up with this insane scheme where he's kind of, at this point, he doesn't really care if he's wrong, because the Marajorans tell him, I mean, in like that opening sequence of the game, Ari tells him, if you bring back Quetzalcoatl, he's not going to save you. He's going to destroy our home and your home and, maybe the whole world. And at that point, he's just like, I don't really care. He's backed into a corner and he's just trying stuff. And so, I wanted to have that sort of dynamic where Zalotl is definitely the villain, but he is so because there is another possibly greater villain that is threatening him and that he's sort of lashing out against. And so this all kind of coalesced into Katarina, because I have this toxic trait where I'll take like a very serious character, I guess, and then go, okay, but what if we made it a cute girl, and what if we made her really ridiculous? And so I'm like, because I didn't want to do like a traditional, I didn't want her to be like a traditional villain type character.
Right.
I wanted her to be, to have a really big personality and be almost kind of silly, but I almost had this idea where I'm like, how awful can I make her while simultaneously still having players like her?
Yeah.
And and I drew a lot of, they're very different characters, but there's some parallel concepts. I drew a lot of inspiration from another game that I was playing during the development of Arkanya. Early in the development of Arkanya, an expansion for Final Fantasy XIV had just come out, Shadowbringers, and I was really into the Emmett Selk storyline because have you played that game at all?
14, no.
Okay, so in Final Fantasy XIV, there is one of the overarching villains. He's for years and years he was like one of the main villains. Is this ancient evil wizard named Emmett Selk, and he is trying to save a civilization that has been gone for forever. I mean, it was destroyed just like infinitely far into the past, but he is immortal, and his whole life's work has been to try to bring back everybody that was lost. And so he's got kind of a pretty good motivation, but at the same time, he's literally trying to destroy the world and kill everybody so that this old world that used to exist can come back in its place. And he's doing just awful things in the name of this. Like, he has zero ethical boundaries. And so the whole game, he's just doing these horrible things, but he's kind of, from a certain perspective, he's almost justified in doing them. But at the same time, he's very theatrical. He's very fun. Every time he's on the screen, he's really entertaining. He just has this super likable personality, even though he is, just very clearly evil, and he wants you dead. He wants everything you love destroyed. And he would, if he had the opportunity to, he would throw you straight into a volcano without a second thought. Like, he is not your friend. But you just love having him around because he's so fun. And it's to the point where when he dies, most players are sad about it because they're like, yeah, he was my worst enemy, but he was funny. And I wanted to have a character like that, and not that I think Katarina is like that level of evil.
Right.
I mean, people can debate whether they even think she's evil at all, but I had that urge to be like, how bad can I make her while still having people love her?
Right.
And that's kind of where she came from, is just this desire to sort of pull in two different directions like that. Ultimately, I kind of chickened out with there were some parts of the game where I wanted to have her be a lot more egregious in her sort of her brand of villainy. Like, I wanted to have her kind of like terrorizing the Marajorans, and because the Marajorans, I mean, as you probably know, they have a pretty bad relationship with the Castilians,
right?
Because the Castilians formerly occupied their lands and put them into slavery, and they later had a big rebellion where they had enough of it, and they fought back and they pushed the Castilians out of their land. So they're very distrustful of the Castilians, and Katarina, being the princess of that kingdom, she kind of represents everything bad that had happened to them during that time, because that would have been her grandmother was the one who sort of orchestrated all of the oppression that the Marajorans went through. And so I kind of had in my original script for her, there were going to be some cutscenes where she was going to kind of continue just that trend of being awful towards the Marajorans. But I kind of chickened out, where I'm like, you know what, I still want her to be friends with Marisa. I love them together because they make each other worse, and I think that's awesome. But
they feed into each other's chaos.
They do. It becomes like a cyclone. But and I don't want to make that too awkward,
right?
I guess, for the player to sort of reconcile. And so ultimately, I decided she's going to have this like insane main character syndrome where the whole world revolves around her, but she is not going to be the same person that her grandmother was. She is going to have a greater sense of, justice and morality, and almost to a fault. I mean, where she, literally like sees herself as like the arbiter of truth and good, and she is she is the main character of the universe, right? But I decided that she was not going to be just like straight up evil. That was kind of a big change in development for her. Of course, you didn't ask about that. You asked about how we got the different cultures in the game, but I'm thinking about it, we've kind of covered them all at this point, right? Because we talked about where the robots came from, and the aliens. We talked about the German influences. We talked about the Brazilian influences, and we talked about the Spanish. I think that's all of the groups currently in the game, right?
Except the capybaras.
The capybaras. Okay, so
I do know the reason why the second player is Kapi is because just people love capybaras, and the first 100 testers or people that you were showing the game to were like just in love with the capybaras.
Yeah. So originally there were always going to be capybaras in the game, because if you're in Brazil, you got to have capybaras.
Yeah.
But originally they were just going to be sort of NPCs, like like the Puru village.
Yeah.
That was always going to be a part of the game. That was planned right from the start. But there was a particular capybara that we called Kapi, who was like the first capybara that you meet, and he was going to be kind of you've played Ocarina of Time,
of course. Yes.
Yeah. So the owl that you meet, I want to say his name is Kapora Gabora.
You got it.
Okay. Yeah. So the owl that you keep meeting that kind of like guides you along your journey, that was going to be Kapi. But Yeah, so we did our little like demo test, which was a completely different game. Like I think I still have it
Oh my
somewhere,
god,
but if you
I
played it to
saw an interview that you guys did like 3 or so years ago, and they were showing like gameplay of the game back then. Oh my god, it looks completely different now, and it's crazy how much like improvement you guys have made.
yeah, and before we even decided there was going to be co-op, because again,
Yeah,
one of the things that kicked off this project was Rob was playing uh, like ROM hacks for the Oracle's games,
yeah,
and and he really liked the animal companions that you get in the
that's
Oracle's games.
right.
Like you can get
Yeah,
in like the kangaroo pouch and like hop around with the kangaroo and stuff. And he's like, we need to implement something like that in some way. And I think the first idea we came up with, and there's still art of this that exists, but the first idea we came up with was you could ride the capybaras. Uh, Now, sadly, the later implementation of co-op killed that idea, but
right.
because we could not figure out a good way to make that work in co-op. I think if I were to try it again today, I could do it because I'm a much better programmer now. At the time, I couldn't figure out how to not make this like break the game.
Right.
And so we said, okay, we can either have co-op or we can have capybara riding. We can't really have both. Well, Kapi doesn't really seem like he would let you ride him anyway, you know? So
Yeah.
so that kind of got cut out. But yeah, so based on early feedback, we're like, okay, we need to make him a permanent part of the team. He should always, we're going to transfer him from being the Kapora Gabora to now he's Navi.
Yeah.
And he would follow Marisa around, and you could have him like stay in place, like you still can. You could have him stay in place, and then you could pick him up and move him, and you could put him on things, and you could like throw him over things. And there were like different puzzle elements that we sort of incorporated into him. But then we took it even further. Like, what if you could swap to Kapi and play as him? And part of what so my memory is a little foggy on this, so my timeline might be wrong here. But I think a big part of what sort of triggered that was there was a demo that had come out around that time for a game called Spindle.
Okay.
And Spindle had the pig companion. And I don't think Spindle's actually come out yet, but Spindle had the pig companion. And one of the things you could do, if I remember right, is you could actually swap to the pig to do certain sections, like there were like tunnels you had to go through that only the pig could fit into.
Right.
And so we're, at this point, we're still in the kind of anything goes phase. We're just throwing ideas at the wall. So we're like, okay, what if you could be Kapi? And, and then the challenge there is, well, Kapi can't fight. And so, you have to avoid danger while you're Kapi. And then we started designing around that. Well, then we had our Kickstarter. One of the Kickstarter stretch goals, and I think this was just added on a whim, and I almost sort of regret it to this day. I think it kind of worked out, but this probably added at least a year to development time. Was we had a stretch goal that we never thought we were going to meet of co-op, and then we blew past it, and I guess we're doing co-op now. So yeah, so we very quickly figure out that playing as Kapi, if you're only playing as Kapi and you can't fight, that sucks.
Yeah.
So Kapi needs to be able to fight. And so we had to come up with a whole combat system around Kapi. And then that's essentially how the game evolved into what it is today. Now, there was also, Kapi also killed the original dance system. So originally, and you can see pictures of this on the Kickstarter, when you would dance, you'd have this little like bar come up where you would do inputs, and it was kind of like the ocarina in Ocarina of Time.
Yeah. Oh my God. I didn't even think about that. When I saw that, I was thinking of early Shantae, because she's a half genie that dances and to transforms into other things. early in the first Shantae game, you would have to do the manual inputs, but then in later Shantae games, you would have to press and hold a button and wait for the right thing. That's interesting.
Well, and so Half Genie Hero,
Yeah.
which I think was at the time was the newest Shantae game, very much inspired the current dance system.
Yeah,
where,
right.
Yeah, Marisa kind of starts wiggling, and you have the boxes that pop over your head, and when the right one comes up, you pick it.
Yeah.
Well, originally, like I said, it was going to work more like the Ocarina in Ocarina of Time, where you would have to. We had the dance sequences displayed on the screen, so you didn't have to memorize them, but you had to do the correct inputs, and the whole game would pause while you were doing this.
Right.
Well, again, in co-op, that's really lame if you're Kapi, where you're just sitting there waiting and you can't do anything. And we debated it, and we're like, what is even the point of making the player do these inputs? Because even in Ocarina of Time, it's kind of questionable why they actually make you do the inputs. I mean, I think most people like doing it because it's like you're like playing the instrument, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of iconic. But if that was in a new game today, I'm not sure they would do it that way if that wasn't already established.
Right.
And then the thing with Ocarina of Time is you were expected to kind of memorize the songs. Back then, that was something that a lot of games had you do. That was something that players just sort of expected, is I need to have my little notepad, my gaming like journal, and write down all these songs. They had them in the menu, but it's like, you're like, oh, I forget how to do the Song of Storms, so now I gotta leave the ocarina, I gotta go to the menu, I gotta look at the song, okay, close the menu, go back to the ocarina.
By the time I get back to the ocarina, I've already forgotten.
Yeah. And so we're like, that was cool for its time, but it's definitely sort of an artifact of that era, and we don't need to bind ourselves to that. Let's look for a better way to do this. And that is when I started coming across, because I knew about Shantae at the time. I had not played any of the Shantae games back then, but people were telling me about them because they were saying that Marisa reminded them of Shantae.
100%.
And I'm like, okay, so I gotta go check these games out. And one of the first things I always do when I get told to play a game is I don't play the game, I go listen to the soundtrack. And that was the first thing I did with Half Genie Hero.
Such a good
I listened to that soundtrack on loop.
So good.
For days, because it was awesome.
Yeah.
And then I actually did end up going and playing a good bit of it, and I saw the dance system in there, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly what we need. And so we kind of adapted that to our own needs. It kind of converged together, but the weird thing is, like, Marisa was not at all inspired by Shantae.
Yeah.
But when I found out about Shantae, I'm like, wait, this is kind of Marisa.
There's a lot of similarities. Like the writing I've already mentioned. Like, Shantae is one of my favorite Metroidvanias, period, right? If anything, is one of my favorite, like, top 5 favorite game series, period. And so, like, the writing is what really drew me into the game, or into the series. I started with the second game, Risky's Revenge, and what got me into it was the writing, just because of how funny and cheeky it was, and a little bit fourth wall breaky. And that's also, again, like, what drew me into Arkanya, that same bit. And then there's the dancing. When I saw there was dancing, I'm like, oh, okay, a little bit more Shantae, like, sprinkled in here. And I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah. And, so far I have only played Half Genie Hero. I would like to, now that I'm not so freaking busy all the time making Arkanya, which we're not done with. We're still working on some post-release content.
Yeah.
We're gonna have some future updates, but I really want to dive into that series because I have been told by multiple people now that, like, this is your game. You need to play this. And I played Half Genie Hero, and they were right. I mean, I loved that game, and I almost want to say it saved Arkanya in a lot of ways.
Wow.
Because there were so many so many design decisions that I was struggling with at that time that fell into place after I played that game. It answered so many questions that I had of how do I do this? How do I make this good? Particularly with the dance system, because we had a lot of complaints, mostly actually from my co-developer, not even from testers, from my developer, that the dance system was clunky. It wasn't fun to do. It felt like you were overly punished for doing it in combat, because for a while, because we had this weird transitionary phase where we didn't want to. I didn't want to completely take out the input system, but we didn't want to pause the game because we didn't want to interrupt co-op. And so you just have this weird situation where the game is still moving, but Marisa's dancing, and it takes forever to do. And every time you get hit, because there was no other really good way to handle this, the moment you would take damage, your dancing gets interrupted. You're done.
Right.
And that's really frustrating because originally the dances were going to change the weather. This was way too ambitious, but originally we wanted to have a Oracle of Seasons type thing where the whole game was going to be based around weather changes, and certain things would only be able to progress during certain weathers. Kind of like, in Oracle of Ages, you can only get through certain areas during certain weathers. And again, this is all on the Kickstarter page. That was the original premise of the game. And then we got away from that because that was too much. We were never going to get that done. We probably needed, 3 or 4 more people just working on the maps if we were ever going to do that in the time that we did. We moved it over towards the dances give you different powers. Right. So you have like the fire sword, you have where you can spawn the seed spitters, you have the one where you can call down lightning and stuff. So the dances give you all these different powers. Well, now people want to be able to change dances in the middle of combat to sort of adapt to what they need during that part of the fight.
Right.
For example, one of them gives you the shield that blocks damage and
cures you of status ailments.
Yes. Yeah. And you want to be able to swap to that on the fly because you're like, oh, I got lit on fire. I need to switch to the water dance.
Yeah.
Well, that's a big pain in the butt if you're sitting there going, all right, up, down, left, right, up. That's kind of awful. So we had that weird middle period where that was still in the game, but the game was not paused. And then that's when I started playing Half Genie Hero and saw how they handled it, and I'm like, this is so simple. Why did I never come up with this?
Right.
And I think the answer to that is I was so mentally dug into the original system and trying to salvage it that it's like the easy answer never came to me because it did not really fit within my sort of original paradigm of, this is our ocarina, right?
Right. Now, I do want to take this moment. I'm so happy that we got very deep within all the unique bits of that makes Arkanya what it is, right?
Right.
As well as talking about the similarities between this and the Zelda series in general, even with its inspirations. I do want to take this time and just say, as a major Zelda fan, I was so happy to find this game while just scrolling on Twitter. It just popped up and I'm like, I see Minish Cap vibes here. This is the game for me. And after playing it, again, thank you so much for providing us a review copy of the game. After playing it and 100%ing it, I did that within 14 hours, I think.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know, right? Especially because online it says it takes about 20 hours to 100% complete. And I'm like, I did it
for a lot of people. It does, yeah.
Yeah. And what I said on our Twitter post about this game, I really mean it. This feels like home for me as a Zelda fan, but it's not it's weird. It's it's home away from home because it is different. It is a comfort food that has had maybe a little bit more spice in it, maybe a little change into the ingredients, but it's still the same thing at its core. And it's still I don't know, it makes me feel at home, makes me feel comforted, you know?
Yeah.
There's so many good things about this game that I absolutely love because I've seen it before. It's the type of game that I love to play, but also again, the new different spins on it, either just visually, just within the writing itself, having a co-op system, because that's something that I've always think is like a little bit of a bummer in terms of playing a Zelda game, where like there's hardly any of them where you can play as co-op. Yeah, there are the 2 Four Swords games. Yeah, there's Triforce Heroes, which I really don't like, and the spin-offs with Hyrule Warriors which are co-op, but like a core Zelda game having that function, having someone else to play with. I never really had that, even with Four Swords, right? Even with the 25th anniversary edition on the 3DS, I could only play with my one cousin who we would see each other every few months, you know? So like,
Yeah.
having that option there, even, you know, for me and my partner to play, that's like everything for me as a Zelda fan, because Zelda, that's very, at its core, it's very just isolated. It is just you. It is you as Link going through this journey, and I get it. It's personalized, and that's part of the beauty and that's part of the magic. But Arkanya kind of expands that with this system, and I just feel like everything about this game worked so well for me, a Zelda fan, that I couldn't help but fall in love with it. And I think you guys did an amazing job. And again, I'm not just saying that because you're on the show and you gave us a key. No, I truly mean that as a gamer. And, you know, reviews for the game have been very positive since its release.
97%.
Right? It's gotten thousands of wish lists at launch, or has had thousands of wish lists at launch. What's been the most meaningful bit of player feedback you've received so far?
I love so much whenever I hear from somebody who just gets the game. Like, I try to watch all of the YouTube reviews for the game, and when I can, I don't have as much time to do it anymore, but because I'm actually having to like start, you know, working again.
Yeah.
But I try to watch Twitch streams of the game. If somebody uploads a VOD, that makes it really easy for me. I can go back and watch it. But I really love when I'm listening to somebody talk about the game and they get it. Because the thing is, this is my first ever released game.
Right.
And I'm not somebody who comes from a professional game dev background. I never worked at like a AAA studio or anything. I started indie, and this was my first commercial project. And so I'm still kind of learning, right? And so some of the things that are in the game, some of the systems that I built in, and some of the sort of intricacies, they're not super well conveyed, unfortunately, and a lot of players do miss them. I mean, for example, I've had people tell me they beat the game without ever realizing you could pick up Kapi. Like, they didn't know you could carry him.
Right.
And that's crazy to me because now, granted, there are like ways to work around it. People have figured out other things you can do with like the wave ribbon and like, you know, basically finding ways to almost ignore Kapi. But that was like one of our core mechanics, was picking him up and throwing him at things. And there are people who don't even know you can do it. And so there are a lot of times where I feel like, you know, even people who really enjoyed the game, they don't fully see what I did. And a lot of that's on me because I didn't convey what I was doing the best. But
sure,
sometimes we'll get a review where somebody will start talking about systems that I never even really expected people to interact with. For example, I was watching a review the other night where a guy had figured out how the chest respawning system works, because all of the overworld chests, they come back. They're on a timer where after 1 hour, 1 hour after you open them, they go into a queue, and every 10 minutes a chest in that queue will respawn. So it's like they're kind of on a 1 hour cooldown, but it's like they're only eligible to respawn after 1 hour, and then it takes like 10 minutes for each chest to work through the queue. That's kind of a convoluted system. It works really well, but it's like you wouldn't necessarily intuit that it works that way. You might not even realize the chests are respawning. There was a guy on YouTube that I was watching the other day who almost to the minute nailed how that was working. He figured it out. And I'm like, that's so cool to me that somebody cared about this game so much that they figured that out, because that's the most like just obscure, like sort of just hidden system in the game that you don't need to know anything about. You can complete the game without ever figuring out how that works. And just something about the game made him want to figure out, how does the chests keep coming back? Why do they come back? How often do they come back? And he dug into that and figured out how it worked. And I'm like, that's awesome. I never expected anybody to care that much about something that I made. That's wild to me.
And I think your game also gives room for players to really experiment if they want to. There's no hand-holding. I don't think there's any hand-holding. Compared to, like, I don't know, older Zelda games, right? Like even Link to the Past, like there are times where I'm like completely lost. When I was first playing the game, I mean, like I know the game now, right? But like when I was first playing the game, I didn't know what to do, where to go after a certain point. Even with like, especially with like the original Zelda, right? And that's kind of like the point of it. But with Arkanya, there is room. You have a direction to go. You are told a direction to go. You don't have to do that immediately. You have room to explore and go at your own pace. You're a treasure hunter. Go into caves. If you see a cave on your way to an objective, make that pit stop and you will be rewarded, which is awesome. And I love it. And like actually rewarded, and actually like there's a reason to do it. Like you get money, you get to put things in the museum, which gives you more money. A great reward system, by the way, but you have room to explore all these things, all these mechanics. And especially since a unique hook to this Zelda-like game is the co-op, right? I know it took, like, in our first Let's Play episode of the game, it took us, like, I don't know, 20 minutes to figure out that, like, I can just swap to the other character with one less input, right? Then what I was making it harder than what it needed to be, and then I figured that out, and then there's that light bulb moment, and I'm like, oh, okay. That's exactly what I want from a Zelda-like game, because that's the dopamine or whatever hit that fuels me, and that's one of the reasons why I love this genre. And there's plenty of that within your game, especially when the systems can be a little bit, I don't want to say complicated, but like it's not that simple. Or you guys did a good job at simplifying these intricate mechanics that also has a deeper level to them, in my opinion. If that makes sense.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. And you know, I go back and forth on that, because that exact thing that you described, where you were doing extra inputs to swap between Kapi and Marisa, and you didn't realize that you could just do it with, like, you know, basically one button press. We've had people, you know, we've had people leave feedback. Fortunately, none of them have like left a negative review or anything, but we've had people refund the game and leave feedback saying that the game was too hard and they just felt like it was impossible to beat for that exact reason, because they never figured that out. Like what you figured out there, that never occurred to them. And so rather than, I don't know, I feel like people just have less patience for games now.
Because I had to stop with that. It's one of the first puzzles in the first dungeon where like you have to light 2 torches within a certain time limit, right? So like that's the part where I was like, okay, wait a minute. There's a point where I was like, let me read these commands. Let me just read these 4 options. Okay, follow me, go to Kapi, do this, do that. Oh, let me try this. Let me experiment, right? Let me take the time, and then boom, figured it out. Yeah, and you're right. I think there is something to say about gamers nowadays, that their patience or lack of attention, their minimal attention span kind of gets in the way.
Yeah, because I remember the games when I was a kid, you were lucky if you even had a tutorial.
Or a manual.
Yeah, a lot of them were just, and that was what you did, was you'd read the manual. The games used to require a lot more reading.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that was, and now granted, it wasn't as easy to buy games back then. You know, you had to get your parents to take you to the store, and you had to convince them to buy you the game. And, you know, you might only get one game every couple of months. And now you go on Steam, you buy a game in 30 seconds. And if you don't immediately like it, you just refund it. And so I think people have less patience for games, but it used to be, it's like, you know, you get that one game that this is going to be your game for the next, like, at least like the next month or so.
Yeah.
And you're going to finish that game. Like, you know, come hell or high water, you're going to finish that game. And if you get stuck, you know, you figure it out. Or if you can't figure it out, you know, well, let's open the manual. Okay, manual didn't help me. I'm going to go talk to the neighbor kid. Hey, you played this game. How do I beat this part? And it's hard to design these kinds of games now, because you still want to, at least I still want to make games for the people who want to do that, who want to have that aha moment, right? But at the same time, there's so many people now who don't want that. They just want to, you know, they just want to blow through the game, beat it in like under 10 hours. All right, next game. And they're chasing the end credits. They're chasing the completion.
Yeah.
Rather than
the journey.
You know, I think enjoying the journey. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's such a big part of the market now. You can't ignore those people. If you're going to make a living doing this, you have to make a game that's also for them. And so it's hard to find that balance. It's like, how do we entertain, like, you know, the real, like, OG gamers who want that experience of solving the puzzle versus, you know, also while also not scaring away the people who they just, you know, want to add this to their completion list and never think about it again.
Yeah. To not gush about it too much now, because we have, but you guys have made an incredible game, especially for those people who love Zelda-like games like myself. For the Zelda fans, for the fans that, you know, you're probably catering towards, or like it's probably like your top consumers. This is a perfect addition to the Zelda-like genre, and I'm so happy that I got to play it, and just thank you so much for making it.
Well, thank you. That means a lot to hear.
Well, I think it's time now to get into the speed round, where I'm going to ask you a bunch of silly random questions, and we're going to see how you do. Are you ready?
Oh boy. Okay, ready as I'm gonna be.
If you were the final boss in a video game, what would your title be?
I'm gonna go with the credits blocker.
What would your boss theme music be? And you can choose any song from anywhere.
I'm gonna go with the Chocobo music from FF13, just because I think it would be a really funny boss music.
Yes, it would.
That would be kind of my vibe.
Wow, 13 specifically. I love that. I love 13. If you could attend any fictional event, for example, the Ewok celebration in Return of the Jedi, which one would it be and why?
I am going to, I'm going to bring up FF13 again. I want to be, in that scene where Sarah and Snow are on the beach, and I want to say they're in Palam Polam.
Yep.
I love that area so much. I don't want to be involved in anything they're doing, because that goes terribly. But yes. I just want to be one of the NPCs, like they're at like the tiki bar on the beach, and I just want to be there chilling.
So like at the sunset before the fireworks.
Yeah, and you know, and the fireworks in that game were so cool, because
so
I mean,
pretty.
they had magic fireworks. Of course, they're cool.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So I want to be there for that.
That's a great answer. What would your 14-year-old self think of who you are today?
I mean, after just releasing a video game, well, my 14-year-old self would probably be like, "How'd you get so out of shape?" But other than that, I think I would be super stoked, especially because around 14 years old was the time that I first started tinkering in like RPG Maker.
Wow.
And, back then, I think it was Game Maker 7. So yeah, I was from a pretty young age. I was messing around in game development, and I had like I said, I was really into World of Warcraft back then, and I had dreams of one day working at Blizzard. Now, after everything that's happened, I'm glad it didn't go that way. But that was around the time where that was like my dream, and later that stopped being my dream because I got in the Air Force and I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life there. And, that kind of fell away. But then it came back. And I think, 14-year-old me would be just so stoked about that. Now, 14-year-old me would probably question the game that I made because my tastes have changed a lot since then. It'd probably be like, why are you making a game about this weird girl? Why is it not like a cool knight or something? But people change.
Yeah, understood. If you can, real quick, share any kind of updates to what is there to look forward to in the future for the Girl of Arkanya?
Yeah, the 1.03 update for Arkanya, which will have, by the time this comes out, we'll have added a handful of big quality of life features that people have asked for.
Cool.
And so, people should check that out. But for future stuff, we are probably going to be looking at the 1.1 update around. I'm going to try to have it out by the time the Steam Christmas sale starts. It will definitely be out this year.
Cool.
And that's going to add a few big new features to the game. I want to make this very clear. I'm largely a solo indie dev. My co-developer, he's got like a full-time job now. He can't devote as much time to the game as I do. And, it really depends what I can get done. But the goals for 1.1 are a music player that you can craft. We're going to be using some of because like people have complained, well, so much of the treasure you only just sell, there's nothing to do with it. Well, There's going to be a crafting sequence where you're going to create a music player. Once you've built it, it will be available in all of the inn rooms.
Cool.
And there will be collectible discs throughout the world that unlock the songs in the game that you can then feed into the music player, sort of similar to the library, but it's all on this one machine. And so you'll be able to go up to the music player and select what song you want to play in the inn room. And it will remember that song, and every time you go into an inn, any inn, it will play that song until you change it.
Wow.
We are also trying... This may end up being early next year, but we are going to try by 1.1 to have the fishing system implemented. And the fishing system is going to be a bit more involved than I think a lot of fishing mini games in like Zelda likes, because a lot of times you have like, you go up to the fishing spot, you cast your line in, you get this little bar that comes up, and it's like you got to hit the button at the right time when the bar is lined up to get the fish. This is going to be, if you want an idea of what it's going to be like, look up the fishing system from Breath of Fire 2. We're going to be doing something very similar to that. It's going to be a little less ball busting. Breath of Fire 2's fishing system was kind of hard, but the vision is that, so this will be doable solo or co-op. So for solo, you'll be using one hand with the face buttons to have Marisa cast her line from, she's going to be sitting on a rock, and she'll cast her line, and depending on how long you hold the button, that'll be how far she casts it out. And then it will start sinking towards the bottom. Now, with the thumbstick, you'll be controlling Kapi, and this is in like a almost like side scroller type view, right? Like if you think of original Link's Awakening.
I was just about to say Link's Awakening.
Sections.
Yeah.
So Kapi is going to be down in the water, and his job, you'll move him around with a thumbstick, and his job is going to be to chase fish toward the hook, because as the hook sinks, any fish that it touches, you catch. But there's also going to be treasure that you can find down there. And the goal is to have an aquarium that will function like the museum, but for fish.
Cool.
And then one more thing in the 1.1 update, and I'm kind of spoiling everything, but that'd be a secret little treat for razzle dazzle podcast listeners.
Yay!
We were working on visuals for the sword upgrades before the game came out.
Yeah.
So the sword visually changes as you upgrade it. And this was almost done, but because we had some major bugs come up right before the game came out that were never discovered in testing until we started sending out press keys, and people with the press keys started reporting them. And it was catastrophic. One of the things, the weather system never activated.
Wow.
None of the original reviewers ever saw any of the weather changes. And worse yet, one of them actually got stuck in, I still do not know how this happened, but we did somehow manage to fix it. Their game got stuck in the middle of the night. It was just permanently dark. And so they asked me, they're like, is this whole game supposed to take place at night? And I'm like, no. Okay, well, we have a problem. And so that weapon upgrade feature that we were trying to get in last minute, we had to shelve it because these bugs had to be fixed. But it's still going to get into the game. It's been delayed a bit, but we're going to get it in the game. And I do want to be clear, it's purely visual.
Yeah.
It's just going to make your sword look cooler as you level it up.
Which is worth it because of everything you have to go through.
Yeah, and I think that'll make that quest a lot more satisfying too, because we've had some feedback. People can't agree on if the sword is like super strong or super weak, because some people say the upgrades don't help at all. Other people are like, you max out the sword and you're just one-shotting everything.
Yeah,
like,
I noticed that with like the monkeys and the alligators that are definitely not Zoras. Yeah,
well, it more than doubles your damage if you completely upgrade it. Mm-hmm. And it impacts Capi's projectiles as well. A lot of people don't know that.
Wow.
Yeah, but I think it'll make it a lot more satisfying to a lot of people to actually get a visual indicator that they've made progress on that.
Yeah.
And I think for future players, that'll make them a lot happier. Now, sadly, for the hundreds of people, over 1,000 people at this point who have 100% of the game, that's not really going to help them. But maybe when the new content comes out and they go back and do that, they'll get to enjoy a really cool looking sword.
Definitely. Wow. Well, thank you so much for that exclusive little tidbit.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, you made it to the end. It's time for you to recommend 3 people that you'll share this episode with when it comes out, that you think they'd be good guests on the show, if you can kind of help me get them on the show.
Yeah, these are other game developers that are active in my Discord. I'm going to recommend Joe and Alan from Positive Concept Games. These guys they have been making a game almost on the same timeline as ours. It's been for about the past 5 years.
Wow.
It's called Shrine's Legacy, and they are fellow Indiana residents, and we've met up with them, and me and my co-dev, we've met up with them in person before. They're very cool guys. They are making a game that's more kind of like Secret of Mana.
Cool.
And it's coming out actually in October. So that'll probably be a little bit after, maybe a little bit before this episode comes out. And I'm almost certain that they would love to come on here, and I could definitely hook you up with them. Another person who it's questionable if he's going to have time. He's super busy, but somebody who would be super interesting to have on here would be Max Mraz from his company is Moth Atlas, but he made the game Ocean's Heart, which was sort of an inspiration for the girl from Arkanya in the sense that when he made that, when I saw that, I was like, okay, if he can do that by himself with no prior experience, I can do it too. And so that kind of gave me the motivation I needed to finish it. But he also, he's an amazing guy, does so much for the community. He reviewed all of my early map designs for Arkanya and like edited them, gave me feedback on how to improve them, because that was one of the big things I struggled with was map design. He is crazy good at map design, and he went through and gave me so much feedback on how to improve my maps. And people tend to really like the layout of the overworld in Arkanya today, and so much of that is due to his changes and the advice that he gave me going forward that I've tried to stick to as best as I can. So I'm definitely going to recommend Max Mraz 100%. And the third one that I want to recommend is the YouTuber Game Endeavor. Now, I do not know his actual name, but he's very active in my Discord. He has a super good YouTube channel where he shows off devlogs for his game, but also he explains how to do different things in game development. Like he talks about his process for designing different mechanics and stuff. And he's a very good speaker. That's a big part of why I would recommend him, because he would come on here and do a way better job of talking to you than I have. And he has been working on several different genres of games. So I don't think he has released a game yet, but he is deep in development on 3 different games, and they all look really cool. And he's so smart. He's so good at game development. So 100% I'm going to recommend Game Endeavor as my third one.
Awesome. Well, I really, really appreciate that. Yeah, we'll do what we can to get them on the show. I'm excited and looking forward to that. Do you have any final thoughts?
Oh gosh, I have already talked so much. It's been so fun to talk to you, and especially because you're so passionate about the genre and you've 100%ed the game, which you told me that before and it kind of slipped my mind. But you're the first person that's interviewed me that has completed the game, so that made this really special for me.
Oh well, I'm happy that I'm able to do that. Yeah, whenever we have game devs on the show with games already out, I try my best to do as much as I can as possible. We've had Chris Stair and Trevor Youngquist on the show from Bow Path of the Teal Lotus. I'm wearing the shirt actually.
Oh, nice.
From the game, and I love that game. One of my favorite Metroidvanias of in recent time. And before I even spoke to them, I 100% of the game. When we had other people from Night Shift Games with Elsie that released a year ago. Yeah, we were lucky enough to get a review copy of the game before it came out, and I almost platinumed the game before the game came out, and I only got it a week before the game came. I was missing 2 achievements, and it's a roguelike game, so it's all RNG. So
oh no.
Yeah, so it was frustrating because I was trying to get the platinum before I spoke to the dev and before the game came out, but I was almost there. But point is, I try my best to, and of course with Arkanya, like I said, it's natural. It's it is home for me. And I'm just so grateful that we got a chance to talk to you. And of course thank you so much for letting us get a review copy of the game. And I really hope that, our relationship doesn't end here and that it keeps going. And I'll be more than happy to not only cover the game more on our YouTube channel for our Let's Play, but also for any future updates as we get to them. So thank you so much, Harrison.
Absolutely, anytime.
All right, that's all the time we have for today, guys. If you want to hear more from Harrison, consider joining the Girl from Arkanya Discord server, and be sure to check out The Girl from Arkanya, out now on Steam. Be sure to let us know what you think about this episode somewhere on the internet, and be sure to follow us on our socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Links to them are down below. Be sure to rate us 5 stars and leave a comment down below. We'll catch you on the next one. Next time on The Razzle Dazzle Show. But why an onion?
Man, I think we just drew it and like it just made us laugh, and we were like, we have to do it. Like any decision in our game, we just come up with whatever's ridiculous, and then we are like, well, now we have to do it because we're all laughing too hard at the idea of it.
Does the protagonist have a name at this moment?
Not right now. We're just calling him like onion.
I'm from Miami, so I'm Hispanic. The Spanish word for onion is cebolla, and the boy sounding part of that word.
Cebolla, I like that.
There's something there that you can make it bit out of that adds layers to the name. But I haven't
have like a biome that's like Florida or something. Everyone there will call him cebolla or something. That'd be fun.
Ah, that's cool.
That's a really fun sounding word. I want to write that down. We're gonna hold on to that one.
Tune in next week.